Welcome to today's webinar brought to you by PropAcademy as well as CTU Corporate Training Unlimited. PropAcademy is a specific division of Corporate Training Unlimited, and we're very happy to present the Navigating the PPRA Maze, where we will discuss compliance, clarifications, and your way forward with regards to this topic. Just to get started, I want to give each of our speakers to introduce themselves properly. So I think let's start with you, Courtney.
Hi, everybody. I'm Courtney from PropAcademy. It's so lovely to see so many names that I recognize in the waiting room and in our meeting now. As you know, I'm in PropAcademy. We're an online training provider, and I'm the National Business Development Manager. So here to help you with any of your needs, getting your agencies compliant, then this is your right team to contact.
Fantastic. We can then go over to Jan.
Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining PropAcademy. From my side, I'm going to answer any questions that relate to education and the CETAs, the QCTOs. Yeah, and I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. Deborah.
Hi, everyone. My name's Deborah. I'm an advocate of the High Court, and I'm employed by the Property Practitioner Regulatory Authority in the position of manager of the Fidelity Fund claims. I've also acted in a number of positions as an executive in relation to licensing, registration, legal and compliance matters. So I have a fair knowledge of the PPRA as it operates currently, and I also have a fair amount of experience with the new Act and the regulations which relate to it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, I think we can get started. Deborah, the first question I'm going to ask is actually directed towards you. And the question is, what exactly does it mean for a practitioner to be compliant according to PPRA's recent clarification?
Right, thank you. Compliance is set out in terms of the provisions of the legislation that applies to us currently, which is the Property Practitioners Act and the regulations passed under that. Particularly Section 50 of that Act contains the requirements for you as an estate agent or a property practitioner in general to operate lawfully, and it specifies exactly what will disqualify you from being able to operate. So basically you need to ensure that Section 50 provisions don't apply to you. Compliance is basically that you have a valid and current Fidelity Fund certificate in every industry in which you operate. It also means that you have complied with all the education, audit, conduct, and general requirements which the Act sets out. And this would, of course, include your payment of fees and penalties. So if you have an FFC and it's not been withdrawn or lapsed, it remains valid for the period which is specified in it, even if you become non-compliant during the period of its validity. However, if you are not compliant when it expires, then you will not be able to get a new Fidelity Fund certificate until you become compliant. And this would include education requirements, solvency, BEE requirements, tax status, the right to work in South Africa, either a South African citizen or the required visa, convictions in terms of either criminal convictions or disciplinary convictions, contraventions of the Act which you have been convicted of, if you've had a claim paid by the Fidelity Fund, or if your FFC has been withdrawn or lapsed. So education requirements are one of those aspects which is crucial for compliance. And it should be remembered that education disqualification currently only applies to estate agents. It doesn't apply to the other industries because we do not yet have an education matrix in respect of the other industries. And then finally, just to mention that not all non-compliance will result in the refusal of an FFC to be issued. So, for example, you may be audit non-compliant. You will still get your Fidelity Fund certificate if you comply with the other aspects of it, but you will have to pay accumulated penalties as set out by the regulations. But there is various non-compliance issues or aspects which will cause an FFC to be refused. So I hope that answers your question.
Definitely. And I think to kind of continue on with that, Courtney, perhaps you can jump in on this one. How does the compliance criteria differ between a property practitioner and a principal practitioner?
Okay, sure. From an education point of view, to become go from candidate to property practitioner, there's 3 steps. You've got your internship, which is your intern logbook that you supply, your NQF Level 4, and your PDE 4. And then you will change from candidate to property practitioner. And then if you wanted to go a step further and own your own business or join a business as a principal, then you would, in addition, get your NQF Level 5 in real estate, register as a principal by doing all the recommended and necessary documents and payments. And then once you are a registered principal, then you have 2 years in which to write and pass your PDE 5.
Thank you so much. Jan, as you mentioned earlier, there's a specific area that is more related to your expertise, which leads to the next question. Could you perhaps explain the significance of the various terms such as NQF 4 and PDE 4 and others in the context of the compliance?
Thanks, Colleen. Yes. So everyone knows that an NQF 4 is a SAQA qualification, an NQF qualification. Okay, so that is where you achieve credits for getting your qualification done. Now, in real estate, we have to do the NQF 4 because it's legislated and regulated by the PPRA. So what happens is you will do your NQF 4 and you will continue to do your PDE 4. Now, that's your level 4. With a PDE, that's your professional designated exam. And the reason at this moment in time for that is that if you were to become exempt from your NQF 4 because you had a degree that had absolutely nothing to do with real estate, you would have to complete your PDE so that you attain that real estate background.
All right. Well, thanks, ladies. We've now covered quite a bit on the details of the compliance, and I'm sure we're going to touch on it more. But the next phase I want to go into is more about understanding the background. And Deborah, this is possibly where you can really unpack for us. So can you maybe give us a brief background on why the PPRA implemented these compliance regulations in the first place?
Sure. I think we need to just remember, and I'm going to give you a bit of background here, that the PPRA, just like the old EAAB, is a creature of statute. In other words, we are created by an act of parliament. And previously we existed as a result of the Estate Agent Affairs Act 112 of 1976. And in terms of that act, the Estate Agency Affairs Board was constituted, and they regulated only estate agents. Certain managing agents were also included by way of a regulation, but not all of them. And so in terms of that act, the regulations applied only to estate agents and not to any other kind of property practitioner. When the new act came into being in February last year, the new act is now known as the Property Practitioners Act, and it did away with the old Estate Agency Affairs Board, and it created its successor in title, which is the Property Practitioners Regulatory Authority. It also included the other areas of property practitioners which previously were not regulated by us. So instead of just regulating estate agents, we now regulate 12 different industries within the property sphere. So it meant that regulations were now required for us to be able to administer the regulation of these other industries. All the previous regulations applied only to estate agents. Now we required regulations which applied to other industries and which set out what their requirements would be in respect of complying with the Act and the regulations, and particularly what we as a regulator would be enforcing. And so the regulations were then passed by the minister by way of gazetting, and they came from the minister's office. The minister's office drafted them. They achieved input from large areas of the estate agency industry particularly, And a lot of them come from estate agents and were put in by the Minister's office simply as requested. So there's quite a lot of changes. The other thing which needs to be remembered is that the way education is dealt with under the new regulations is quite different to the way it was dealt with under the old regulations. Under the old regulations, first of all, the 2008 regulations, which required the NQF4, the NQF5, the PDE4 and the PDE5, applied just to estate agents. Now we have a regulation which says the regulatory authority, the PPRA, must, in consultation with property practitioners in all the industries, decide what education criterion are going to be required. First of all, as education standards, and secondly, as CPD and PDE requirements and qualifications. Mm-hmm. So it envisages a different kind of approach for each industry. And that's what the PPRA has been engaging with the various industries about for the last year and a half. Mm-hmm. It was decided that the estate agents' qualifications under the old regulation would be perpetuated under the new one. And okay. That's what the requirement would be currently. I don't know if that's going to change. They haven't indicated whether there will be any changes, but it would appear that for the moment, that is what Education Department are requiring for estate agents. So these requirements, as Janet has mentioned, are estate agent requirements. We do not yet have education standards of training which will be required for the other industries. And the Education Department still has to finalize that. So we need to start registering those industries. In the interim, we are giving them exemptions under Section 4 of the Act, and those exemptions will be able to allow them to operate without a Fidelity Fund certificate until such time as our systems are up and running and we are able to register all 12 entities.
And how has the response been from the real estate practitioners since the announcement of all these regulations?
Okay, real estate, there's been a lot of confusion, and I think the regulations themselves are partly to blame for that, because they are not a model of clarity. And I think there's a lot of misinterpretation in relation to them. And I think that we as the PPRA, excuse me, we should remember that we only received these, I think, 2 months before they were gazetted. So although we had some input, a lot of our input was not recognized as necessary. And so we received the document which we were not familiar with to a large extent. And as a result, it took some time for us to come to terms with it, to get to grips with it, and to be able to try and implement the regulations. And that, I think, also has led to a confusion within our ranks as well as within the public ranks, which we are, I think, addressing, as we go along and trying to resolve by wherever we can, going out to the public and being able to explain whatever's needed.
All right. So before we go into dissecting disqualification, I actually want to say, Courtney, this is maybe something you could assist with. We've got a question from Jennifer. I've received the NQF5 and want to get principal status, but do not want to open up my own company yet. So how can I get the principal status without having to open a trust account? So I think we need to decide, is this a question that can be addressed now, or would you like to address this a bit later?
Oh, no, we can address it now. Jan, I'll do the first part. So with regards to having your NQF5, Jennifer, that's excellent. But in order to actually hold principal status, I know you don't want to open up your own company yet, but if you're going to hold principal status, you need to be registered as a principal, and to do that, you need to be under an agency and on the company documents. So Jan is the expert at the trust account. So I'm just going to ask you, Jan, if you can assist with the exemption of the trust account, just a short explanation.
Jennifer, hi. Thanks for your query. And remember, you can contact me on janet@propacademy.co.za if you need to. So you cannot hold a principal FFC unless you are an acting principal. So you will be working under a principal until such time as you're ready to open your agency. And if you were to open an agency, a recommendation would be that if you are in sales, that you never, ever, ever open a trust account. And if you do have a trust account and you're not using it, then you must apply for exemption from it by going through the normal procedures with the board. And I hope that helps. And if you've got anything else, just pop me an email.
Yes, we will be sharing contact details of our presenters today. I'm actually going to see if I can quickly drop just an image on our chat, just highlighting this. We do have some more questions popping in. Obviously, do need to keep our time in mind. So I think let me just quickly do a quick analysis. One of the questions is about disqualification, so I think we can maybe quickly move into that. So Deborah, this is again definitely your field of expertise, and we're now going to dissect disqualification. So from your experience, what are some of the most common reasons practitioners are being disqualified?
Right, thank you. Well, there are a number of most obvious reasons, and at the moment, the one, of course, is estate agents who are being disqualified for failing to comply with the 2008 regulations. And I think that's the topical one at the moment. There are, of course, this doesn't apply to the other industries, as I've indicated. The other aspect which is a problem is penalties. And there are many agents who are not actually disqualified, but they simply cannot renew their Fidelity Fund certificate because they need to pay outstanding penalties that have accumulated, which they either weren't aware of or which have come in as a result of the new enactment, and they haven't complied with the new act, which has led to the accumulation of penalties. So the payment of penalties, certainly, the lack of education compliance in respect of the 2008 regulations. Also, in terms of the old act, if you failed to comply with audit requirements, you were disqualified under that act. The equivalent of Section 50 under the old act was Section 27, and that specified particularly that if you were an estate agent and you failed to submit your audit report to the board within 4 months of your financial year end, and it was not compliant, you would be disqualified from obtaining a Fidelity Fund certificate the next time you applied for it. Now, because the Act doesn't apply retrospectively, those provisions were implemented at the time, and some agents were, or principals particularly, were disqualified as a result of that non-compliance. And they have to proceed to the exemptions and Section 27 department, who will still act in terms of those old provisions and allow you to become compliant once you submit your audit reports. In terms of the new Act, you need to remember that Section 50 does not require audit compliance for you to get your FFC. All it does is it means that you will pay accumulated penalties if you continue to operate, you don't deregister with us, and you haven't submitted audit requirements. So those are the main reasons that we have disqualifications currently.
All right. And how does a practitioner know if they've been disqualified, and what immediate steps could they take post-disqualification?
Okay. When we disqualify anybody, the system sends an automated message to the estate agent who is registered at the email address which you have given us when you either changed it or when you registered with us. So if you didn't get it, it's usually because you haven't given us your latest email address, or you've changed it and you haven't advised. So that is the first thing that is done. The other thing you can do is go onto the portal. I have to tell you that at the moment they're working on the system, so the portal is not functioning. We're hoping that that will be up within a couple of days. But you can go onto the portal, put in your details, and find out whether you are blocked or not, or whether you can go onto your profile. The other thing you can do is call our call center, who will look on the system and tell you there is a disqualification or there isn't, or what non-compliance is clear from what they can see. But the procedure generally is the other thing that you can do is you can email Section 4 exemptions. That's section and then the number 4 and then the word exemptions all together at the ppra.org.za. And Section 4 exemptions deals with all disqualifications that require you to follow a process to become compliant, and they will help you through that process. So
all right. Okay, and could you maybe expand on the importance of deadline and its implications for practitioners?
All right. There are a number of deadlines, but the main deadline, I think, in relation to disqualifications currently is the education deadline. And I'm quite sure that you have gone and looked on our website at the notice, which was sent out by the Education Department. The notice that they sent out was sent out indicating that as from the end of June, those who had failed to comply with the 2008 requirements for education qualifications were now basically out of time to do so. And so in order to enforce that, those persons would be disqualified from obtaining a further Fidelity Fund certificate. That doesn't mean your current Fidelity Fund certificate is not valid. It remains valid until it expires. But what the Education Department did is they sent out a notice saying, please be aware, first of all, that when you apply for a new one, you are not going to get it if you don't have your qualifications. And secondly, we want you to apply to us within the next 6 months in terms of Section 56 to be able to receive your FFC in 2024, because we will grant you an exemption in the format that is set out in the notice. So you need to submit an affidavit, you need to tell us why it's in the interest of justice or why it's necessary for you to be given your Fidelity Fund certificate in spite of the fact that you haven't complied ever since 2008 with the requirements of that regulation. And that regulation is now perpetuated under the new regulation. And on that basis, we will consider granting you that exemption. And that gives you a period in which to comply with the education requirements, and we will not deregister you in the interim. We will also not block you from obtaining a Fidelity Fund certificate. We will unblock you so that you can get one. And then it's up to you to ensure that within that time period, you obtain the qualifications that you require for the status that you are operating in. So if you're a non-principal, you have to make sure that you have got your NQF 4, your NQF 5, your PDE 4, your logbook has been completed, and you've completed your candidacy.
Thank you so much. Courtney, we are going to move on to mapping the rectification process. But before we get into that, are there any of the, because we have received a lot of questions while we were discussing the disqualification aspects, is there anything specific you'd like to address here from the questions that we've received?
I think the questions are brilliant, but I think we should address them a little bit later so that we don't lose track of what's going on. And also by answering some of, going through our speech for today, we might answer them indirectly.
Fantastic. All right. I also want to say to the audience, if we don't get to all your questions directly, the speakers, especially from Courtney's side, will reach out to you if there were any specific questions that they can assist with directly. So keep that in mind. We're not going to leave here without any contact. All right, so let's continue. So Courtney, this is over to you with regards to mapping the rectification process. So can you walk us through the process of how a disqualified practitioner can rectify their status?
Yes, okay, sure. So obviously you need to submit your application to the PPRA within 60 days of being disqualified. And in that application is an affidavit, and you're going to request an extension of 6 months in which you must become fully compliant. Okay, so this time period starts from the date that you receive notification that you were disqualified. Okay, and a part of a lot of the questions there was that you've been disqualified wrongfully so. A lot of people did get, for example, that they were being disqualified because they hadn't written the PDE 5, but they are not even registered principals. So we need to make sure that you understand the compliance, what is expected of you, to see if that disqualification is applicable. Okay, the people, you should be able to log into your portal, and if you're blocked and you do need to write your PDE 5 and you are a principal, then the main point is just to get it written so that we can start unblocking your profile. Okay, so what we take away from it is, yes, there is an application process that you need to follow, and there's actually quite a nice link here. I'm just going to quickly share on the group for you, and if you can have a look at that. I've tried to break it down as easily as possible and factual, but then the main thing here is that we're not going to sit and wait for anything. We need to now get compliant. So if you were disqualified because you've had an FFC for too long and you haven't complied, for example, with the PDE 4, the main point is to get registered for the PDE 4, write your exam and get compliant. Okay, there's no point in trying to fight the system. We just need to comply and uplift our industry. And so what, I'll talk about our offerings as well, but I mean, we can advise you with a copy of your 2022 FFC or prior, and your ID number. Our consultants at PropAcademy can really guide you to make sure that you're not wasting time and you're getting compliant as quick as possible.
Fantastic. And what role does this 60-day application window play, and why is it crucial for practitioners to act within this time frame?
So when you received your disqualification email or notification, they wanted you to apply for an extension, your 6-month extension within that time period, and that is to avoid a penalty. So that is what it's for. So what you're doing is you're applying there for your 6 months, so that you've got extra time to quickly comply, so that you can quickly finish your NQF form, get your certificates, and write the PDE, whatever is outstanding on your side.
All right. And when the practitioner sends the application in, should they expect a response from the PPRA, or do they just focus on becoming compliant by their deadline? I think that's probably for Deborah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to lean on Deborah here. Yeah, so I mean,
yes,
they need to rectify.
Yes. No, I'm in agreement with Courtney, definitely. I wouldn't wait for a response from the PPRA. You never know when that might come. So it's much better to focus on going ahead with it. You should receive a response, and you should in fact receive something from the education department confirming that they've received it, that they've considered it, and that the extension has been granted. But whether you receive that or not, remember that you can continue to become compliant in the interim. And remember also that your Fidelity Fund certificate at this stage is still okay. They have not withdrawn your Fidelity Fund certificate, and it also has not lapsed. So in terms of the Act and the regulations, there is no basis for them to at this stage say that you are operating unlawfully or not. Okay, but you do have the right to proceed as soon as possible to become compliant, so that at the end of the period you can ensure that you can get your new Fidelity Fund certificate when the other one expires.
All right. And I think what's clear from what you just said is they shouldn't expect the response first before they continue. That shouldn't be the next step in your process. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay.
And it's the same with education, Colleen. Like if somebody has submitted their logbook to the PPRA to be marked and is holding back to start on their next step, it's not advisable. Immediately just start on your next step. As long as you don't need a pre-qualifying qualification in order to continue, then just continue with the steps and everything else will follow.
That's good advice, because I think that was something a lot of people were wondering about. So obviously, to cover insights and some recommendations, we're going to talk about that before we maybe can address a couple of these questions, and this is addressed to all here. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice for practitioners aiming to navigate these regulations effectively? Obviously, whoever wants to start.
Well, I can say that, you know what, as an individual, you need to know what the path is and you need to be clear on it. So you go through, I mean, we've really abbreviated a lot on our website under blogs. I'll send the link through now. And if you just have a look and really understand what is expected of you in order to comply, because then you take ownership of it and then you must get your studies done or complete whatever you need to do in order to comply. And as soon as you've taken that ownership and you've set your time aside, done your time management, the main focus is to uplift the industry. We shouldn't be fighting back on this. You know, you want to be the best of the best. So that's pretty much what I can give. And start your studies. You know, don't delay, because there might be other delays you didn't predict.
Right, Deborah, any advice from your side?
Yes, I agree with Courtney, and I think particularly is just get a copy of the Act and the regulations and read them. You know, very often we don't read and we think, oh, it's legalese and I'm not going to actually understand it. And actually a lot of it is fairly simple. It's fairly basic. You will understand it if you apply your mind. There will be some areas where you're actually not sure what on earth they're talking about. And then ask. You know, you're welcome to email me. You're welcome. I'm sure that PropAcademy do exactly that. They can assist you with explaining things that you don't understand. Or go to somebody like a principal who is qualified, who knows, who perhaps has much better knowledge of the Act than you do. So read it. And then the other thing that is important is that we try and put it into an everyday practical context. So when you read a regulation, say to yourself, what does this mean in practice? Okay. And I know that with Janet, I've done training previously for various estate agent entities that she and I have assisted with this kind of thing. And we've always used concrete examples to be able to say, all right, in this situation, let's take an example of this and this and this, and how does the regulation apply to that? And that's how you learn these things, as opposed to just learning the theory. So put it into a practical example and see if you can understand it. And if you can't, then find somebody, get hold of me, Janet, Courtney, whoever, and say, all right, how does this apply in real life, in day-to-day experience?
Fantastic. Jan, anything from your side?
Yeah, I would like to say something on the education topic. You know, PropAcademy are always the forerunners, in my opinion, in real estate. And we are about to achieve our accreditation for the new NQF4. We've just finished developing that material. And the difference between the old NQF4, which is the 59097, and the new one, which is the 118714, is that you used to have maths and literacy at a matric level in order to write your NQF4. That's changed. You now can have matric in any subject matter. So that's going to be brilliant for our
That's
learners.
amazing. That's just going to help so many learners.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and we hope to have that accreditation by the end of this month.
That's fantastic. And I think relating to what you said, Jan, Courtney, this is obviously for you as well. How overall can PropAcademy assist practitioners in this entire journey beyond what's already been addressed?
So what we love to do is, people will often phone us and say, I need to do my NQF4, but we don't like to just sell you what you think you need. We like to do research outside to make sure that you are on the most affordable and quickest route possible in order to become compliant. So what we do is, it's called an agency assessment, and you can contact us, Charlotte or myself, and you can actually list everybody in your agency, we ask you for a certain amount of details. We then assess all of the agents one-on-one, individually, and we revert back to you, and we tell you which courses they need to do and by when in order to comply. So that's one of our, absolutely really, really popular option that we offer you guys, and it's free of charge. So yeah, you can reach out to us, and obviously with that, we plan their journey. So we do ask them a lot of questions to make sure they're on the right route, and then we plan their journey for them. We get them enrolled onto our courses, which are all online, so you can do them in your own time. If you want to study at 10 o'clock on Sunday night, you're able to do that. Okay, and nothing holds you back. You can go to the next step. Once you've completed module 1, you can move to module 2. You're not waiting for a class or anybody to catch up with you. So that's pretty much what we focus on from my side, Caroline.
Fantastic. And now I think we've got a couple of questions in this chat group. I'm sure you've seen most of them. What we could possibly do is we can ask some of the people who has a question they felt wasn't addressed in the continued discussion to repost it again, and we can look at it. One question that just popped up while you were speaking, Courtney, was what if you don't have matric?
So if you don't have your matric certificate, and you need to do your NQF Level 4, for example, that's totally fine. We put you on your NQF Level 4, and then once you've completed it, we give you, you have to do 2 short bridging courses, a maths and a literacy course, and they're quick sticks. You complete them, and we send your portfolio in to get assessed and verified.
Okay, so Dean's reposted his earlier question. I'm going to read it to you. So if CETA services found you compliant for NQF 5, but PPRA now find you incompetent because you haven't done the PDE 5, is that conflict of laws? Which one is the authority to find you competent? No other industry is so conflicting. They have one education standard. So I think, Deborah, that might be for you.
Okay, yes, certainly. Okay, there's no conflict at all, actually. What the situation is the following. There's a standard, an education standard, which is required, and there is what is the equivalent of a board exam. Okay, so your qualification standard is your NQF4. That's, when I say qualification standard, I'm talking about a qualification standard like a matric or in whatever it is that you happen to have done instead of your matric. So your NQF qualification is that standard, that education standard. That is not offered by the PPRA or the EAB as it then was. It's offered by external entities such as PropAcademy, those kinds of things, in line with SACWA, as Janet has said. Your board exam is your PDE. Your PDE 4 is your junior board exam, and your PDE 5 is your senior board exam or your master practitioner exam. Okay, the PPRA doesn't say that you are not competent or you are not compliant because you haven't got a PDE. The Act and the regulations require what it is that is supposed to be complied with. And under the old 2008 regulations, which came out under the EAA Act, that regulation specified particularly that you have to have, in order to practice as an estate agent, an NQF 4 and a PDE 4, which is your junior board exam. So the two are totally separate qualifications. The PDE 4 is set and offered by us, and we credit you in relation to that. The NQF 4 we don't. Now, in terms of the new Act, it requires that the board set out and come to a decision as to what the standard will be for each industry. Estate agent industry, it is NQF 4 for your ordinary practitioner and NQF 5 for your principal practitioner. All right. It also says that nobody, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, is allowed to operate unless they have the standard that is required, if there is one set out by us. And secondly, if you haven't done a practical course of training, which is the old internship, and or the new one, which is the equivalent, and you haven't passed a PDE exam. So every industry has to have a PDE exam, which we have to set for you, and it has to have a practical course of training of 6 months, which in terms of the Act, we also will set for you. And then we will tell you what is required. Now, as I've said, for the other industries, those are not yet set up, but for estate agents, they are set up. And they are the NQF 4 for ordinary practitioners, and the PDE exam, which the Act requires, is the PDE 4, which we require you to pass. In terms of principal, NQF 5, and then once you are a principal and you are practicing, you then write your PDE 5 exam within the specified period, and then you become a master practitioner that way. So there's no conflict of law, there's no conflict of anything. It's the two different standards that are required, both of which are required for estate agents to operate.
Right. And thanks, Courtney, for answering a couple of the questions in the chat. So if I have looked at the ones you've answered, so I might not address them directly. So I'm going to go over to George's question. George asks, may an agency still trade if the principal has been disqualified but still have a valid FFC?
Yes. Yes, he may. As long as the FFC has not been withdrawn or lapsed. Okay. Withdrawn is, there are specific criteria in the Act. Section 50, 51, 50, 54, up to 56, which specify under what circumstances an FFC will lapse automatically and under what circumstances they will be withdrawn. To be withdrawn, before we can withdraw anybody's FFC, we have to give you notice that we are considering doing so, and we have to give you an opportunity as required by the regulations to say to us, yes, I agree, I'm wrong, but these are my circumstances. Please, can you not withdraw it? Or no, I disagree completely, and here's the evidence that I want to submit. And only then can we either make the decision to withdraw or not to withdraw. So you will know all about it if we're going to withdraw your Fidelity Fund certificate. Otherwise, it's an unlawful withdrawal. As far as a lapsing is concerned, lapsing only happens when you become insolvent, when the firm that you work for becomes insolvent, or you are no longer employed by a principal estate agent as an estate agent. So those are the kinds of circumstances where your FFC would lapse, not in any other circumstances. So where you are non-compliant for education, but your FFC already has been issued, it remains valid for that period unless it is withdrawn.
Right. I'm going over to the next one. This is from Label. I've electronically submitted the logbook during the PPRA strike period in June, July, and have not received any response ever since. I have proof of submission. What do I need to do from here?
Okay, the best thing to do is to send an email to one of the education officers, and the one I would suggest is somebody by the name of Mamiki. And Mamiki's email address is mamiki.siabela, S-E-A-B-A-L, E-L-A, at theppra.org.za.
Can you repeat that one more time?
I've got it.
Okay.
Okay,
right.
great.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. I think you've answered.
And then, Caroline, if I can pop in there, just with some of the ones that I've answered, and just for those who didn't see my responses, a lot of questions with regards to the NQF Level 4. Say that you are unemployed possibly, or that you don't have a mentor because it's not directly in your industry and you want to study. That's totally fine. So you would register for the NQF Level 4. Okay, taking into account that if you don't have your matric certificate showing that you passed literacy and mathematics or maths lit, then you'll need to take bridging courses at the end. Okay, so you can actually register, pop an NQF 4 into your cart on our website, and you can actually add a mentor, because a lot of people are stuck in your situation where they want to study. A lot of people, and I'm so proud of them, that they want to study before they enter the industry, and they shouldn't be held back because of that. That's going to make them better, and it's going to make our industry better. So we've got a group of mentors available that will assist and guide you as your mentor throughout the course, sign off your documents we needed. And honestly, they are so supportive and lovely. So you would just add a mentor to your cart if you don't have a mentor already. And you can do it if you're unemployed or if you're not in the industry. A lot of people want to study the NQF 5, but they don't necessarily want their principal to be signing off their files, because they might not feel that they'll be supported. And in that case, again, you can just come through and hire a mentor. It has to be with our courses, because our mentors are trained on our courses. So that's just to answer quite a few questions that were there.
I'm just going to have to check which ones don't apply. So I'm going to see there's a few that you've marked with a thumbs up.
A thumbs, yeah.
Do you want me to look at them? Okay,
I've replied to those, yeah.
All right. Okay, let me just take a look. I think you did answer that one. Mentorship, let me just quickly scan. Okay, Jenny asks, I'm asked on PPRA portal to complete FFC registration. Cannot get any further. My FFC is valid, so please let me know what this is.
Okay, can you just explain? You go in and do you go in onto your portal? Does it let you in onto the portal, or what's the position? Just put it down in chat, or otherwise send me an email. My email address is Deborah, DEBRA, .vial, VIAL, at theppra.org.za, and I'll be able to direct you to the correct person.
Okay, sometimes, you know, when you're trying to log in, it will sometimes, you know, especially with newbies, if you've paid and you've submitted all your documents and you've received from the PPRA a reference number that's now your FFC number, and now you try log in, there's often quite a delay between actually getting into your portal. It asks you, please upload the document. So sometimes that just takes a bit of time, and then you're able to get in a couple, you know, maybe a couple months later. I think Sam Human, if we could address her question.
Quickly, while we let's take a look at Sam. So let me just quickly go there. Sam Human. Okay, so Sam wrote, our company manages their own commercial retail properties, and therefore it seems they do not need to be registered, but I would like to still have my NQF 4 and NQF 5 qualification. How do I accomplish this when I don't have a principal? Traditionally, I've always worked for managing agents and do have a FFC.
I think the second half of that we've already addressed, but just with regards to Sam, hello Sam, but just with regards to the commercial company and retail properties, we would need a bit more detail. Janet, maybe you can jump in here, but we'd need a bit more detail from you to see if they are compliant at the moment. I know you're saying that it doesn't look like they need to be registered, but maybe we just need to double check with you.
Yeah, I can also assist with that.
Okay, sure.
Janet, do you want to come in first?
No, Deborah, over to you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Managing agents under the old Act were included by way of a regulation only if they managed body corporates. So the majority of managing agents either didn't register under the old Act with us because they managed mainly home ownership associations, or they managed individual entities, or they managed their own properties. But in terms of the new Act, one of the industries which we now regulate is managing agents. And managing agents are anybody who manages property or any right, title, or interest in the property. And so a managing agent under the new Act does have to register with us, does also have to have a Fidelity Fund certificate. At the moment, we are not able to register you because our system is being configured in order to be able to do so. So what we have done is we have issued Section 4 exemptions to those persons who want to operate and continue to operate as a managing agent or as an employee of a managing agent firm. And all you do is you apply in terms of Section 4 of the Act. There is a form in the regulations called the E1 form. And the E1 form is the form you use to apply for an exemption. You send it to the mailbox, which I gave you earlier, Section 4 exemptions, with section and the number 4 and exemptions at the ppra.org.za. And in it, you specify that you are a managing agent. You are continuing to operate, but you are unable to get a Fidelity Fund certificate. Can you please be exempted from sections 4, 47 and 48 of the Act, which is the section which requires you to have a Fidelity Fund certificate in order to operate legally. So we then give you a certificate confirming that you are exempted, and you will continue to be exempted until the end of December, which is when we believe we will be starting to register managing agents. You need to have that exemption in order to operate lawfully. Okay.
I think, Courtney, we can maybe address the next one, which is when must the logbook be started and when are you allowed to submit it?
Okay, so you're not, okay, so with your
That's
logbook,
from Andre.
Okay, Andre. So what happens is you get issued with a Fidelity Fund certificate, and your certificate will have an issue date on it. From that issue date, you get 12 months, and that is your internship. Your internship is 12 months long. Now, what is your logbook? Your logbook is evidence that you have performed over those 12 months. So you're going to complete documents, you're going to show learning material, and you're going to put evidence inside your portfolio of evidence and submit it. And you submit it 12 months from your first FFC issue date. Okay, so you got it not 1 day sooner, please, just on the 12-month mark. That's how you'll submit it, and you can submit it by going to their buildings, but we encourage online submissions.
We have an interesting question here from Angie. We have a foreign employee. He has passed matric overseas, so doesn't have 2 South African languages on his matric. He has an NQF 7 and went to Rhodes University.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Thank you. Basically, if he's going to be writing the new qualification, the new one which we're going to launch at the end of the month, you only need an NQF 3, which is basically a standard 9. And you don't need to have a South African language or maths in that NQF 3 qualification.
All right, and that will be by the end of the month, next month.
Well, we're hoping we have a CETA visit planned. So it's an external visit, so we have no control over it. But we're hoping and praying.
Okay, all right. I don't have a name here. It's just A. Otomansky is asking, who can I speak to regarding upgrading my qualification to principal to be able to book for my PDE 5?
Okay. So, yeah, Deborah, you can go ahead.
Okay. In order to write it, you need to, as Courtney indicated earlier, have registered as a principal. So you have to be operating as a principal in order to write your PDE 5. And that you can do through the education department. The same lady I mentioned earlier, Mamiki, would be able to assist you with that. I don't know if you have any direct suggestions, Courtney, in relation to how the easiest way is for them to do that you found.
I think just reach out to myself, and I need to understand your situation as to how far you are in it, what is outstanding, what is still needed, and then I can direct you correctly. We have got people that we use. So Courtney at propacademy.co.za, and my details are throughout the chat, 081 314 3197.
We've also shared the details on the chat. You guys can go check. There's a gift, but we'll also share the details afterwards. And Courtney and her team will be reaching out to our attendees today as well. I think I'm just going to cut. We've got 5 more minutes, and I'll see if I can address 2 of the questions. Maybe from the last ones, Courtney, was there anything specific you noticed that you'd like to address here? Because I think some of them are repeats.
Yeah, some of them were just repeats, so I've just replied where necessary. And our team has also sent links. For example, we've had a lot of questions saying, how do I know if I'm exempt from the NQF level 4 and 5? Can I apply for an exemption through the PPRA? Definitely. My advice is always, if you qualify for an exemption now, apply straight away. You don't need an FFC in order to qualify for an exemption. So if you are still looking to come into the industry, but you want to quickly, you're waiting for your FFC or you haven't got there yet, you can still apply for your exemption. There is a link we have put on the chat with regards to that. So I'm just going to resend it because there are quite a lot of comments. So this link that I'm pasting now, it's not going to tie you into any payments whatsoever. You will click on the link if you've got an NQF level 6 or higher, and you've got SAC or credit studied through a South African institution, and you studied for 3 years or longer, then you can go ahead and click on it, see if you pass. As long as you've got your transcript and everything else it asks you, then you can look at exemption for 4 and 5. Their fees have changed. So if you're doing an exemption against the NQF level 4, it's 2,021 Rand to the PPRA. But if you're going to apply for 4 and 5 exemption, it's 3,000 if you do it at the same time. So complete the quiz and please just lean on our sales team to assist you throughout it.
Yes, and what I'll do also for a second time is I'm going to, especially on PropAcademy side, just share the contact details again on a visual. Again, to all our attendees, this is a webinar that is brought to you by PropAcademy, so they can definitely direct you to the right people as well if they won't be able to assist you directly. So please make use of the contact details that have been shared. Courtney, who's in attendance today, but also Charlotte, who works directly with her. And obviously, I know Charlotte is also in today's session. She's joined us and has been helping with a few of the questions that we've received. Obviously, we don't have a lot of time left. We don't want to go overboard because we know everyone has to get to their responsibilities and other meetings. So we actually just want to conclude here. And if you've missed anything, we are going to share the recording with the entire list who's registered. Even if you came in late, that's fine. You can have a look at the recording again. And we also have the opportunity to reach out to you, especially if we know that you've asked very specific questions during today's session. PropAcademy will be in contact to see how they can assist you further. And also feel free to reach out directly. All contact details have been shared in the chat. So I think we can conclude there today. Thank you so much, Courtney, Deborah, and Jan, for your time today. It's clear that everyone received an informative session. We've received quite a few comments that state this. So I just want to say thank you from our side at CTU as well. And yeah, we hope to see our audience again soon in one of our next discussions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Deborah, for joining. It was so insightful to all of the audience and for us as well. Really appreciate your time. And I do see a lot of further questions. So please note, like Colleen said, we will get back to you now. And you've got my details. So if we've missed anything, please just give me a shout or WhatsApp that number and I'll give you a phone call to discuss. Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, bye.